There is a story they used to tell in the frost-bitten villages of the old country. A whisper passed between women mending nets by the firelight while their men were out at sea. It wasn't a story of heroes or kings. It was about two men in their village. One was the deacon, pious, kind, predictable. He brought bread to the hungry and mended the orphans' shoes. His smile was a warm woolen blanket in the dead of winter. The village loved him. They cherished him. They erected a statue of him in their minds. But when the women dreamed at night, in the deep, untamed hours before dawn, they never dreamed of the deacon. His goodness was a flat white wall. You could admire it, lean on it, but you could never imagine what was on the other side, because there was no other side. He was perfectly, completely, and soul-crushingly known. The other man was the lighthouse keeper. He lived alone on the cliff's edge, a silhouette against the violent sunsets. He spoke little, smiled less. He was seen wrestling a fallen beam into place during a squall, his face a mask of brutal determination. He was seen sitting for hours with a wounded gull on his porch, patiently tending to its wing. He returned lost children to their mothers with a curt nod, his eyes holding the vast grey indifference of the sea itself. The villagers respected him. They feared him a little. They didn't understand him. And that was everything. He was a question without an answer. His silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of what, they couldn't say. A capacity for profound tenderness and a capacity for what? For solitude that bordered on misanthropy? For a violence he had tamed but not extinguished? For a judgment that was not God's but his own? The women didn't just respect him. They watched him. They wondered. In their dreams, it was the lighthouse keeper's shadow that fell across their bed. This is the first and most painful truth for the modern man, the good man, who has been taught that the path to love is paved with agreeableness. It is not. It is a lie. A beautifully decorated, comforting lie told to make you manageable. The man who is only good, only kind, only accommodating is the deacon. He becomes a utility, a dependable piece of furniture. You don't desire furniture, you use it. True, magnetic desire, the kind that haunts, that distracts, that becomes a low hum beneath the surface of a woman's day, is not sparked by safety. It's sparked by a paradox. It's the saint with a flicker of the monster in his eyes, the monster with an inexplicable act of sainthood. It is the dangerous aura of the man who contains multitudes and is master of them all. Nietzsche understood this, not in the context of seduction. That would be far too vulgar for him, but in the context of the soul's ascension. To become the Übermensch, the overman, one cannot simply be good as defined by the herd. One must transcend their morality altogether. You must become a lawmaker unto yourself. This creates an energy, an aura of self-possession so profound it feels like a gravitational pull. He is not playing by your rules or her rules or society's rules. He is playing his own game, and the mystery of its rules is what becomes intoxicating. She doesn't know why you are kind. Is it a strategy, or is it a genuine expression of a deep, internal code that she is not privy to? When you are ruthless in your work or fiercely protective of your solitude, she sees the other side of that coin. She sees that your kindness is not a weakness born of a need for approval. It is a choice, a gift granted from a position of strength, not a plea offered from a position of deficit. Your affection is not a desperate negotiation for hers. It is a sovereign state, and you are merely offering a temporary visa. This is the essence of the game, not a manipulative game played with others, but the brutal internal game of self-mastery. The man who stops chasing women is the man who begins to chase himself, his own potential, his own darkness, his own quiet, lonely mountaintop. And in doing so, he becomes the mountain, immovable, mysterious, ancient, something to be explored, not conquered. There's a strange beauty in it, this grotesque alchemy. You must court your own shadow. Invite your inner monster to tea. Ask him what he fears, what he hungers for. You don't kill him, you don't indulge him, you integrate him. He becomes the bass note in the symphony of your character. Without it, the melody of your kindness is thin, reedy, and forgettable. With it, it is resonant, deep, and haunting. A recent Zurich study, one of those dry academic papers published in mid-2024 that few will ever read, spoke of ambivalent attraction signals. It found that sustained female interest correlated most strongly not with consistently positive behaviors, but with a cocktail of profound empathy and an unnerving degree of autonomy. The man who could cry at an opera on Friday and cut a business rival off at the knees on Monday without a moment's contradiction. The lighthouse keeper. He doesn't offer predictable comfort. He offers something far more thrilling. The terrifying and beautiful realization that she is in the presence of a free man. A man who does not need her and therefore is free to truly choose her. So, here is my question for you, whispered from this candlelit room to yours. A question to carry into the quiet of your own night. You, who have spent your life being the deacon. You, with your reliable smiles and your desperate agreeableness, sanding down every sharp edge of your personality until it is smooth, safe, and utterly sterile. Tell me, what have you done with your lighthouse keeper? Where did you bury him? And when the night is utterly silent, can you still hear him, faintly, from under the floorboards, clawing to get out? A man who lives for a woman's approval becomes a ghost in his own life. Let me tell you the funniest, saddest joke in the world. A man, lonely and adrift, decides he will find himself by finding love. He pours his entire being into winning the affection of a woman. He studies her, learns her tastes, anticipates her moods, memorizes the music of her sighs. He becomes the perfect man for her, and one day she turns to him, her eyes shining with adoration, and says, "I love you." The punchline. When he looks in the mirror to see the man she loves, there is no one there. He has become a perfect, beautiful, empty reflection of her. This isn't a quick, violent death. Oh no, that would be far too merciful. This is a slow, elegant execution, performed with the most loving of smiles. It's the death of 1,000 paper cuts, each one a tiny compromise, a swallowed opinion, a hobby quietly abandoned. It begins innocently. You stop listening to that harsh, angry music you love because it wrinkles her nose. You start watching her favorite shows, telling yourself you're expanding your horizons. You adopt her friends, her politics, her preferred vacation spots. You are being agreeable. You are being a good partner. What you are actually doing is meticulously dismantling your own soul and selling the parts for scrap, just to afford the rent in the palace of her affection. Your life becomes a performance piece. You are the lead actor, the director, and the stagehand in a one-man show for an audience of one. Every word is scripted, every gesture rehearsed. The clothes you wear were approved in a silent focus group held in her mind. The restaurants you frequent are the ones that fit the character she wants to be seen with. The very way you laugh begins to modulate itself to harmonize with hers. This isn't her fault, not entirely. The jailer is never as culpable as the prisoner who hands her the keys. You are the one who volunteers for the role. You are driven by a terror so profound you barely acknowledge its existence. The fear that the real you, the unvarnished, inconvenient, selfish, and strange you is fundamentally inadequate. So you create a representative, a smooth-talking ambassador to live your life for you. The problem is, ambassadors have no home country. They live in a permanent state of exile. Kierkegaard would have called this the aesthetic life, taken to its most tragic conclusion. You live for the immediate sensation, the pleasure of her smile, the comfort of her touch, the validation of her praise. But you never make the leap into the ethical, the stage where you define your own values, your own self, independent of anyone else's applause. You are a bonsai tree, pruned and shaped with loving care into a beautiful, delicate form. It is an art piece. But you were meant to be a wild, untamed oak in the middle of a windswept field, and deep down, in the rings of your wood, you know it. The beauty of your containment is the proof of your tragedy. A chilling 2025 study from a team of German sociologists explored this very phenomenon, which they morbidly termed ego mirroring in long-term cohabitation. So, they found that in relationships heading towards collapse, the man's self-reported personality traits would often begin to converge unnervingly with his partner's, a desperate unconscious mimicry to stave off abandonment. He wasn't a partner anymore. He was an echo. The study concluded that this wasn't a sign of healthy alignment, but a psychological death rattle, the final, silent scream of a self that is about to be extinguished. And the terrible irony? She doesn't truly want the echo. No woman wants to be in a relationship with her own shadow. She may think she wants the agreeable, conflict-free man, the one who mirrors her perfectly. But the creature she fell for was the one she first met, the one with strange opinions and rough edges, the lighthouse keeper, not the deacon. In your desperate attempt to become what you think she wants, you murder the very man she was drawn to in the first place. You become a ghost haunting the house of your own life, and eventually even she starts to feel the chill. She can't see you anymore. She just feels a strange, empty coldness where a man used to be. The first step out of this prison is not a grand explosion. It is a small, quiet act of treason. It is putting on that music she hates, not defiantly, but just because you want to hear it. It is taking a walk without your phone, in a direction that serves no purpose but your own curiosity. It is tasting a word on your tongue, an opinion, a desire, a no, and daring to speak it, not to hurt her, but to simply reclaim a single square inch of your own territory. It is the first time the bonsai tree sends out a wild, unapproved branch, cracking the pot. That is the moment of hope, the moment the ghost begins to feel the blood in his veins again. So, here is a quiet question, not for the man you pretend to be, but for the one you've locked away. I want you to look at your own two hands. Do it now. Study the lines, the calluses, or the lack of them. Are those the hands of a builder, a creator, an artist, a fighter? Or have they become smooth, pale, and ornamental? The hands of a courtier skilled only in applause and the delicate art of holding a teacup exactly as she likes it. Be honest with yourself. Whose hands are you holding? What men mistake for lust is often a desperate craving for oblivion. There is a secret I should not tell you, a confession that feels like swallowing glass. The loneliest I have ever felt in my entire life was not in the empty silence of a solitary apartment. It was not in the sterile anonymity of a hotel room in a city where I knew no one. It was in the handful of seconds immediately following a moment of what the world calls intimacy. In that deafening silence after the storm, lying next to another soul, the sheer crushing weight of my own separateness, my own consciousness, would return with the force of a physical blow, and I would realize the chase, the flirtation, the conquest, it was never about her. It was about finding a moment's reprieve from myself. This is the great unspoken heresy of modern masculinity. We are told that a ravenous hunger for women, for novelty, for the chase, is a sign of virility, of power, of life. It is not. It is, more often than not, the symptom of a profound and terrifying spiritual famine. The man who is constantly chasing is not running towards something. He is running from something, and that something is the vast, echoing silence within his own soul. Schopenhauer. That cheerful bastion of pessimism would have recognized this immediately. He called it the will to life, a blind, insatiable, relentless striving that is the source of all our suffering. This will is a metaphysical hunger that can never be filled, and its most powerful, most deceptive agent is the libido. The urge to merge, to connect, to lose oneself in another is the will's cleverest trick. It promises transcendence, a momentary escape from the prison of the self. And for a fleeting moment, it delivers. In the heat of passion, the thinking mind goes quiet. The anxieties recede, the past and future dissolve. There is only the glorious, roaring, animalistic now. But what happens when the fire dies down? The self, which was merely suppressed, not vanquished, comes flooding back. And it is worse than before, because now it is contrasted with the memory of that beautiful, temporary oblivion. The silence that follows is not peaceful. It is the silence of a battlefield after the battle is lost, and the hunger returns. Only now, it is sharper, more desperate. And so, the chase begins again. A new face, a new thrill, another dose of the anesthetic. It reminds me of an old forgotten fable. There was a man born with a strange affliction. He could consume ghosts. He would travel to ruined castles and forgotten cemeteries, and with a terrible effort, he could inhale the lingering spirits of the dead. For a moment, he would be incandescent. He would feel the ghost's passion, its sorrow, its final, violent rage. He was full, gloriously full of a life that was not his own. But the spectral energy always faded, leaving him hollower than before, haunted by 1,000 faint echoes. His own soul was starving, so he became a connoisseur of the tragedies of others, a gourmand of ghosts. How many men do you know like this? Their lives are a collection of half-read stories, the ghosts of other people's love and intimacy. They mistake this collection for a personality. They use women not as partners, but as portals, a momentary escape hatch from the crushing boredom and terror of their own inner void. It is the highest form of vampirism, not feeding on blood, but on the initial spark of another's soul, only to discard the vessel once the spark has been consumed. A 2023 paper on what some neurologists are calling acquired motivational anhedonia touches on this. It suggests our modern world, with its endless stream of digital novelty and high dopamine rewards, the Tinder swipe, the Instagram like, the thrill of a new match is conditioning our brains for the chase, not the reward. We become addicted to the wanting, not the having. The constant pursuit of these peak experiences slowly erodes our ability to feel pleasure in stable, quiet, ordinary reality. The simple joy of a long conversation, of shared silence, of predictable comfort. It all feels grey and tasteless compared to the fireworks of the hunt. We have trained ourselves to be beautifully, tragically, and permanently unsatisfied. The liberation, then, is not in finding the right person who will finally fill the void. That person does not exist. The liberation is in turning around and facing the void itself. It is the terrifying, ascetic act of stilling the hunger, of choosing solitude not as a punishment, but as a discipline. It is to sit with the crushing silence until it is no longer crushing, but clarifying. To starve the ghost eater until he is so weak he can finally hear the faint, steady heartbeat of his own soul. It is only when you are no longer starving that you can come to another's table, not as a beggar, but as a king, with a feast of your own to share. This leads to a dangerous riddle, one that cuts to the heart of this deception. Let me ask you this. If, by some magic, you were granted a partner who would fulfill your every desire, sexual, emotional, intellectual, perfectly, immediately, and without question, for the rest of your days, would the profound silence that followed her first, eternal yes feel like heaven? Or would it be the single, most terrifying sound you have ever heard? True freedom begins the moment you accept you will never be fully loved. A broken bell, they say, can't ring a perfect note. The flawed man walks a holy way, a prayer caught in his throat. For only he who is not whole, who bears a visible stain, can ever truly own his soul and find the grace in rain. We are raised on a mythology of soulmates, of unconditional love, of finding our other half. It is the most beautiful, most profitable, and most destructive lie ever told. The pursuit of this perfect, healing, all-encompassing love is the great spiritual sickness of our time. It keeps you performing, polishing, hiding, and pretending. It makes you a terrified applicant in a lifelong job interview for a position that doesn't exist, the position of being enough. The truth is far harsher and far more liberating. You are not enough. You are, in some ways, fundamentally and irrevocably flawed. There are rooms within your soul that are ugly, petty, selfish, and cold. There are secret histories you will never tell. There are wounds you carry that make you lash out in ways you don't understand. And these parts of you are not lovable. No one, not the perfect woman, not a god, not even yourself on most days, can or will love these parts of you unconditionally. Now, breathe. Feel the sting of that. That sting is the poison of the fairy tale leaving your system. The moment you accept this, not with a cynical shrug, but with a deep, calm, almost reverent acceptance, is the moment you are set free. The desperate, sweaty performance is over. The need to maintain the facade of the flawless, endlessly patient, perfectly wounded romantic hero finally dies. And in its place, something real can begin to grow. Think of Baldwin IV, the leper king of Jerusalem, a boy who ascended to the throne already afflicted with a disease that was literally rotting him from the inside out. In an age that saw illness as a sign of divine disfavor, he should have been an outcast. He hid his decaying face behind a cold silver mask. Yet, he became one of the most brilliant and respected military leaders of his time. His enemies feared him, and his men would follow him into hell. Why? Because his brokenness was undeniable. He could not hide it. Therefore, he had nothing left to pretend. His will, his courage, his intellect, they were all that remained. His power was not in spite of his imperfection. It was forged because of it. He was free from the need to be liked, to be handsome, to be whole. He only needed to be effective. He was a leper, and in his exile from the world of the healthy, he became a king. This is the liberation of the leper. It is the quiet power that comes from dropping the mask and accepting the disfigured face beneath. You stop trying to market yourself as a flawless diamond and instead open a dusty, fascinating antique shop. You say, "Here I am. Some parts are brilliant, some are chipped, some are frankly grotesque. Nothing is guaranteed. Take a look if you dare. Touch at your own risk." Suddenly, rejection loses its sting. How can someone reject you for being flawed when you are the first to admit it? Their judgment becomes irrelevant. You have already passed a harsher sentence on yourself, and you have survived it. You no longer fear the light being shone on your dark corners because you are the one holding the lantern. The bitter sarcasm we feel towards the world is often just the curdled disappointment of a romantic. But the man who embraces his own unlovability moves beyond sarcasm into a state of profound, almost playful indifference. He can be kind, he can be generous, he can be loving, but it comes from a place of sovereign choice, not a desperate plea to be seen as a good man. His flaws are no longer cracks in his armor. They are the ventilation slits that allow his real soul to breathe. And here is the deepest paradox. This is the most attractive state a man can inhabit. A woman of any substance is not looking for a polished Ken doll. She is looking for a human being. A man who is not afraid of his own darkness is a man who will not be afraid of hers. A man who has accepted his own unlovable parts is a man who can look at hers without flinching. This creates not the flimsy conditional love of fairy tales, but a far stronger, more resilient bond. The alliance of two flawed sovereigns. A connection based not on a shared illusion of perfection, but a shared, respectful understanding of each other's beautiful, necessary brokenness. So here is my challenge to you. It is a dare. A small act of psychological terrorism against the prison you have built for yourself. The next time you are in a conversation with a lover, a friend, anyone whose opinion you secretly value, I dare you to let one of your true, ugly, inconvenient thoughts slip out. Not a cruel one, just an authentic one. An opinion you've been swallowing, a preference you've been hiding, a strange, dark, or silly thought. Don't frame it. Don't apologize for it. Just let it land in the air between you like a strange, dark bird, and then be silent. Watch their face. The terror you feel in your chest right now. Just imagining that moment. That terror is the precise measurement of your cage. Now go find the key. A man's power is measured by the silence he can command, both in the world and within himself. In the decadent courts of old, the kings had their armies, the merchants had their gold, and the priests had their gods. All of them made a great deal of noise to prove their power. The shouting of orders, the clinking of coins, the chanting of prayers. It was a cacophony of desperate importance. But true power, the kind that could topple thrones with a single gesture, often belonged to the silent man in the corner, the advisor with no official title, the outcast scholar, the spy master. When he chose to speak, a hush would fall. The king would lean in. The generals would stop breathing. Why? Because noise is the currency of the insecure. It is a frantic attempt to fill a space. The man who is comfortable with silence already owns the space. This is the final and perhaps most difficult truth. The ultimate liberation that comes when a man stops chasing what destroys him is not found in the arms of another or in the validation of the world. It is found in the deafening, terrifying, and finally sublime silence of his own company. We have come to confuse loneliness with solitude. Loneliness is a state of lack, a painful awareness of an absence. It is the starving man dreaming of a feast. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of presence. It is a communion with the self. It is the man who is a feast unto himself. Pascal wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He wrote this centuries ago. If he could see us now, with our phones vibrating, our screens screaming, our minds buzzing with a constant swarm of notifications and borrowed thoughts, he would not weep. He would laugh at the sheer, tragic absurdity of it all. The average man's mind today is a chaotic, overstimulated marketplace. 1,000 vendors are shouting for your attention. Lust, ambition, fear, envy, the opinions of strangers, the demands of your boss, the curated happiness of your friends. You spend your life running frantically from stall to stall, buying trinkets you don't need, trying to silence the noise with more noise. You chase women, money, and status not because you want them, but because the chase is a distraction from the terrifying prospect of stopping. Because if you stop, you might have to hear the one voice you've been running from your entire life, your own. The liberated man does not silence the marketplace. He simply walks out of it. He cultivates an inner desert. At first, it is terrifying. The silence is so absolute it feels like a pressure on the eardrums. The emptiness is so vast it triggers a spiritual vertigo. But if he can endure it, something miraculous happens. In the absence of the shouting vendors, he begins to notice other things. The subtle rhythm of his own breathing, the steady, quiet drumbeat of his own heart. And then, in the vast, dark expanse, he begins to see the stars. This inner stillness has a strange external effect. It creates a gravitational field. People are drawn to the man who is at peace with his own silence. They are loud, anxious, and chattering, and in his presence, they quiet down. They do it unconsciously. It is because they sense he possesses a treasure they have lost, a center. He is the axle around which the chaotic wheel of the world can spin. He doesn't offer them answers. He offers them his quiet. And in that shared quiet, they can, for a moment, begin to hear themselves. This is an intoxicating power, far more potent than charm or good looks. It is the power of a quiet room, Neuroscientists are just now catching up to what the mystics have known for millennia. They talk of the brain's default mode network, the part that is active when we are at rest, the part that generates our sense of self, our memories, our projections of the future. A 2024 study out of Kyoto showed that in our chronically overstimulated lives, this network is becoming pathologically anxious, trapped in frantic loops of worry and craving. Solitude, true device-free solitude, is no longer a spiritual luxury. It is a neurological necessity. It is the only tool we have left to reboot the frantic, overheated machinery of the modern soul. To stop chasing women is the surface-level act. The deep, transformative act is to stop chasing escape, to voluntarily turn towards the silence, to make an appointment with yourself in an empty room and to keep it, to find out what is left of you when all the distractions are stripped away. This is the final game of mystery, not the mystery you present to a woman, but the mystery you present to yourself. And so this is where our conversation under this dying candlelight must end. All your pursuits, all the games of seduction, all the frantic searching for a love that would heal you and a woman who would complete you. It was all just a beautifully decorated, tragic escape from this single, final task. The real question was never, how can I make her want me? That was the child's question. The man's question, the one that waits for you now, is this. What will you discover when there is no one left to perform for, no one left to chase, and no one left in the room but you and the unblinking eye of the truth? Are you finally brave enough to lock the door from the inside and find out?